She was forced by her family to marry her sister's billionaire fiancé in Coma. Unbelievable happened. You ever hear a story so twisted, you almost want to pause and ask, wait, did that really happen? Well, this one did. And it starts with a woman forced into the kind of nightmare you wouldn't wish on anyone, marrying her sister's billionaire fiancé. While he was in a coma. Yeah, you heard that right. Her name was Maya, the quiet one, the overlooked daughter, the girl who had learned to live in the shadow of her sister, Leela the golden child. Leela had everything: beauty, charm, and Daniel, the billionaire heir who could have stepped out of a magazine cover. Their engagement wasn't just a love story. To Maya's family, it was salvation, status, security. The dream they'd been clawing toward their entire lives. Then, overnight, it all shattered. Daniel was in a devastating accident. He slipped into a coma, his future hanging by a thread. The wedding plans? Paused, the fortune suddenly uncertain. And that's when Maya's family made a decision that still feels unreal to this day. They looked at Maya quiet, obedient, desperate for approval and said, "You're going to marry him instead." Imagine the disbelief, the panic, Maya begging them to stop, saying, "This isn't right. He doesn't even know me." But every protest was met with cold logic. It's just paperwork. You'll be securing the family's future. And from Leela, only venom, accusations, screams about betrayal even as she let her parents push her sister into the role of wife. So, under pressure, Maya signed. In a sterile room with lawyers hovering, vows whispered like a cruel joke. She became Mrs. Daniel Hart, married to a man who lay silent, unaware, his hand limp in hers. And here's the kicker: everyone thought the story would end there. That Maya would spend her life as a placeholder, a ghost of a bride, shackled by her family's greed. But comas don't last forever, and when Daniel finally opened his eyes, the truth unraveled in ways no one, least of all Maya's family, was ready for. This isn't just a story about family drama or sibling rivalry. It's about control, betrayal, survival. It's about what happens when the person everyone dismissed finds themselves holding the power no one expected. And trust me, the fallout, it's nothing short of explosive. But before we dive headfirst into this roller coaster, hey, if you love stories where justice isn't just served, it's chilled and plated with silver, please hit subscribe. These videos take hours of writing, editing, and emotional recovery from second-hand rage, so your support seriously means the world. Now, let's start at the beginning. If you really want to understand how Maya ended up trapped in a marriage she never chose, you've got to go back to a childhood where she was never the star of the show, never even close. Maya was the younger sister, though sometimes it felt more like the invisible one. Quiet, bookish, thoughtful. The kind of kid who colored inside the lines, who followed rules because she thought that's how you earned love. But in her house, love wasn't given, it was rationed. And most of it went straight to her older sister, Leela. Leela was dazzling. The kind of girl teachers doted on, neighbors compared their kids to, relatives bragged about at every holiday dinner. She had the smile, the confidence, the effortless charm. If Leela wanted something, she got it. And if Maya wanted something, she usually got told, "Not now. Your sister needs it more." It wasn't always cruel in an obvious way. Sometimes it was subtle little things that add up over time. The bigger slice of cake at birthdays, the prettier dress bought for only one daughter while the other got something practical. Even praise was lopsided. Maya could bring home straight A's, and the response would be, "Good, keep it up." Leela could get a B-. And suddenly it was a celebration of her potential. By the time they were teenagers, the difference was blinding. Leela had makeup tutorials and shopping trips with their mother. Maya had chores, expectations, and silence. Their father, obsessed with status, always talked about how Leela would marry well one day, how she'd put the family on the map. As for Maya, he'd say things like, "At least you're dependable." Imagine being praised for being wallpaper. And here's the thing: Maya tried. She really did. She cheered for her sister at pageants. She clapped when Leela was crowned homecoming queen. She swallowed the sting when family friends called them the pretty one and the quiet one, and she told herself maybe that was just her role in life, to support, not shine. But every once in a while, the cracks showed. Like the time Maya wanted to join the art club, and her mom said, asterisk, that's not for you. Honey, stick to helping your sister with her campaigns. Asterisk, or the day Maya overheard her father saying, asterisk, Maya's sweet, but Leela is our future. Asterisk, little cuts. Sharp enough to leave scars you couldn't see. So when Leela got older and started catching the attention of powerful men, the family cheered as if they'd already won the lottery. And when Daniel the billionaire heir entered the picture, it was as though the universe itself had confirmed what they already believed. Leela was destined for greatness. Maya, she was just their dot now. It'd be easy to say Maya resented her sister, but that wasn't quite it. It was more complicated. She loved Leela. She wanted her to be happy. What hurt wasn't losing out, it was never being seen in the first place. Never having anyone in her corner saying, asterisk, you matter too. Asterisk, and maybe you've been there. Maybe you know what it feels like to be the background character in your own family story. To be the one who fades into the wallpaper while someone else gets the spotlight, the applause, the love. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Drop your experience if you've been there, because for Maya, that invisibility, it wasn't just painful, it was dangerous. It set the stage for everything that came next. The reason no one listened when she said asterisk no dot asterisk, the reason she was the perfect scapegoat when disaster struck, and when her family decided to gamble with her life, treating her like a pawn instead of a person. Maya didn't even realize she was already trapped in a role she never agreed to play. This clocks in around asterisk 840 words asterisk in delivery pacing, with natural rhythm shifts for narration. For Leela, it started like a fairy tale. She met Daniel Hard at a charity gala, the kind of event their family had no business attending except for the sheer determination of their mother. He was tall, impossibly handsome, with the kind of confidence that wasn't loud, it was magnetic. When he walked into a room, people didn't just notice. They adjusted themselves around him, as if his presence set the orbit, and the money well that spoke louder than anything else. Daniel wasn't just wealthy. He was heir to an empire. His family's name was etched into skyscrapers, luxury resorts, and philanthropic foundations. To Maya's parents, he wasn't a man, he was a golden ticket. Leela, of course, slipped into the role of his fiancé with ease. She dazzled at dinners, laughed at the right moments, played the perfect part. Their parents couldn't stop bragging. Asterisk, our Leela is marrying into the Hart family. Can you believe it? She'll be Mrs. Daniel Hart. Asterisk, the words dripped with pride, like they'd orchestrated the match themselves. And then there was Maya, standing in the background, as always, watching her sister play out the dream while she quietly refilled glasses or carried coats. She didn't envy the money, not really. What caught her off guard was Daniel himself, because unlike her family, he noticed her, noticed in small, startling ways. When Maya entered a room, Daniel would greet her directly instead of brushing past. When their parents interrupted her, he'd pause, wait for her to finish, then smile like her words mattered. One evening, after a fundraiser, he'd said softly, asterisk, you're quieter than your sister, but you actually listen. That's rare. Asterisk, it was nothing more than kindness. Politeness, maybe. But for Maya, who had grown up invisible, it felt like sunlight after years underground. For once, someone wasn't comparing her to Leela. He was just seeing her. Still, she stayed in her place. She didn't let those moments mean more than they were. She told herself Daniel belonged to her sister, and her role was simply to clap on the sidelines. But then came the night that changed everything. Daniel was driving back from a late board meeting when his car skidded on wet asphalt. The crash made headlines before dawn. By the time the news reached their house, he was already in surgery. Hours later, doctors delivered the verdict. Daniel had survived, but he was in a coma. The Hart family was devastated. His parents tried to stay composed in front of cameras, but behind closed doors, they were breaking. For Leela, the dream collapsed in real time. The glamorous wedding, the future Mrs. Hart narrative, it all evaporated. And for Maya's parents, panic set in because Daniel wasn't just Leela's fiancé, he was their lifeline. Without him, the fragile scaffolding of status they'd built crumbled. Their whispers turned frantic. Asterisk, what happens to the engagement? Do we still have a claim? Asterisk, the desperation was almost grotesque. Maya watched all of it in disbelief. She wanted to cry for Daniel, for the man lying unconscious in a hospital bed. But her parents didn't seem to grieve. They schemed. They calculated. She overheard her father muttering, asterisk, if the wedding doesn't happen, we lose everything. Everything. Asterisk, and here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because when people are desperate, they stop seeing lines between right and wrong. They stop seeing people altogether. Maya's parents didn't just fear losing their grip on wealth, they feared irrelevance. To them, Daniel wasn't a human being fighting for his life. He was leverage, a door they refused to let close. And in their minds, Maya was the key. But we're not there yet. For now, imagine the scene, a billionaire fiancé lying unconscious, doctors speaking in hushed tones, cameras circling like vultures, and a family in the corner, less concerned with his survival than with their own reflection. That's the moment the story shifts. The moment Maya, once the invisible daughter, became central to a scheme so twisted it still makes my stomach turn. If your family tried to force you into something just for money, would you walk away or fight back? Because for Maya, that choice wasn't a question. It was a command. When Daniel slipped into that coma, the house fell silent except for the whispers. My parents gathered behind closed doors, their voices low but sharp enough to cut through walls. At first, I thought they were mourning him in their own strange way. But I was wrong. They weren't grieving. They were planning. The verdict was simple, brutal, and absurd. I would marry Daniel. Not Leela, the woman he'd actually proposed to, but me. Why? Because appearances mattered more than truth. Because contracts, inheritance, and family prestige couldn't be left hanging. Because my parents believed I was more reliable. Their words, not mine. At first, I laughed. I thought it was a cruel joke. But my mother's face didn't even twitch. Maya, this is the only way to secure the future. Do this for us, for your sister, for the family. Every sentence was a weight pressing down on me. They didn't ask if I wanted to. They didn't care. Choice wasn't part of the discussion. Leela, of course, exploded. She called me a thief, a snake, a nobody trying to steal her place. Her voice shook the walls, but even as she raged, I could see the flicker of relief in her eyes. She wasn't fighting for Daniel. She was fighting for pride. And deep down, she was glad she wouldn't have to tie herself to a man lying unconscious in a hospital bed. I stood there, cornered. Every plea I made was drowned out. I don't love him. He doesn't love me. This is insane. None of it mattered. My father's answer was final. Asterisk, don't ruin everything. Asterisk, so they pushed me forward. Through lawyers, through endless papers, through a ceremony stripped of joy. No music, no flowers, no guests smiling through champagne. Just ink on documents, my trembling hand forced across the page. The officiant's words blurred together, hollow and weightless. My vows were whispers I barely recognized as my own. I do sounded more like a resignation than a promise. The whole thing felt less like a wedding and more like a business merger, except I was the collateral. I remember the room's chill, the sterile scent of paper and ink, the way my mother's eyes stayed locked on me, unblinking, until my pen scraped across the final line. Leela stood nearby, arms crossed, her lips curved into something between a sneer and a smirk. Congratulations, she hissed. Enjoy being Mrs. Hart. Let's see how long it lasts. Her voice cut deep. But what gutted me most was the silence. Daniel wasn't there. He couldn't protest, couldn't save me, couldn't even know what they'd done. And yet, I signed. I signed because I was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and too tired to fight. I signed because walking away meant exile from my own family. And at that moment, Even their poisoned approval still mattered. But the instant the pen left the paper, something inside me cracked. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a trap. A life sentence disguised as duty. And as I signed that marriage certificate, I realized I had just been trapped in a life I never chose. What would you do if you were forced into a marriage like this? On paper, I was Daniel Hart's wife. In reality, I was little more than a placeholder, a ghost wearing a title I never earned, standing in a life that wasn't mine. Every morning, I put on the role my family expected. The dutiful wife, quiet, polished, obedient. I smiled at the nurses when they updated me on Daniel's condition, nodded through dinners where my parents toasted to family unity, and kept my voice low when reporters sniffed around for a story. But inside, I was hollow, bitter, trapped. The irony didn't escape me. My parents had orchestrated this marriage to secure power and stability, yet I felt less stable than I ever had. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't even a daughter. I was a pawn. Leela, of course, made sure I never forgot it. Oh, Maya, she'd sneer over coffee, flipping her hair like she still owned the world. Try not to embarrass us. Daniel may be unconscious, but the tabloids are wide awake. I'd bite my tongue, swallow the sting, and remind myself silence was safer, but the cracks were spreading. My family treated me with the same dismissive condescension as before, only now with a bitter edge. I wasn't their golden child, just their insurance policy. At dinners, conversations skipped over me like I wasn't there. My parents discussed Daniel's estate, Leela's social calendar, even the family's public image, but never me. It was like I'd become furniture, useful, but invisible, and Leela, her resentment grew sharper by the day. At first, she gloated, treating me like an imposter in a role meant for her. But then, as weeks dragged into months, envy leaked through her mask. She'd watch me sign paperwork as Mrs. Hart with a smile too tight to be real. She'd throw out comments like, "Careful, Maya, don't get too comfortable. This isn't your world." I never responded, not because I agreed, but because I knew she wanted a reaction. So instead, I started writing, late at night, when the house was finally quiet. I'd open an old leather journal and pour my soul onto its pages. Every thought I couldn't say aloud, every moment of anger, grief, and shame. It became my lifeline, a secret rebellion in ink. I am not invisible, I wrote. I am not theirs to control. Sometimes, the words shook with rage. Other times, they spilled out like quiet confessions. But page by page, I felt myself returning, if only in whispers. Funny thing, that journal became the first place I told the truth. Meanwhile, the family's facade kept slipping. Neighbors began to question the story. Reporters smelled something strange. Why marry the comatose fiancé? Why the rush? Whispers swirled, and my parents doubled down, parading me around as though love, not desperation, had tied me to Daniel. The hypocrisy was suffocating, and still, Leela circled me like a vulture. Some days she played the victim, sighing dramatically about how unfair life was. Other days she acted like a queen, mocking me for stepping into shoes 2 sizes too big. But I noticed something. The louder she barked, the more brittle her voice sounded. She was jealous. Not of Daniel now. She'd already detached from him. She was jealous of the attention I now received. Even if it was hollow, even if it was poisoned, she couldn't stand that I was the name on those papers. Not her. I told myself it didn't matter. That none of it mattered. But inside, I was seething. And then there was Daniel. Well, not Daniel himself. Not yet. He remained motionless in that pristine hospital room, machines humming, monitors blinking their steady rhythm. But every visit unsettled me. I'd sit by his bedside, watching the rise and fall of his chest, and feel the weight of a man I didn't know pressed onto my life. Sometimes I whispered apologies, words he'd never hear. Sometimes I sat in silence, suffocating under the absurdity of it all. But the more time I spent there, the more I noticed the smallest flickers, his hand twitching, his eyelids shifting like dreams were stirring underneath. The doctors called it involuntary responses. Me, I wasn't so sure. There were nights I left that room convinced he was fighting his way back. Nights when the faintest movement made my stomach twist with dread. Because if Daniel did wake up, or what then? Would he hate me for the deception? Would he see me as a fraud, or worse? Would he become another weapon in my family's arsenal to keep me caged? That thought haunted me more than the silence ever did. And so, I played the role. The dutiful wife in public, the bitter captive in private. On the surface, I was compliant. Beneath it, I was scribbling the truth in ink, clawing back pieces of myself they hadn't managed to steal. But I knew. Deep down, I knew this charade couldn't last forever, because one day, Daniel would open his eyes. And when he did, the house of cards my family had built my prison would come crashing down. Have you ever been stuck in a situation where everyone benefited, except you? It started quietly. One morning, after months of saneness, the machines humming, the monitors blinking their steady rhythm, I noticed Daniel's eyelids twitch. Not the faint dream flutters I'd seen before. No, this was sharper, intentional. I froze. My breath lodged in my chest. His fingers shifted, curling against the blanket. And then, as though the universe decided to tilt on its axis, his eyes opened. Daniel Hart was awake. At first, the room felt too small for the moment. Sterile air. White walls. A man reborn after months of silence. His gaze darted around, disoriented, before landing on me. And here's the thing, I'll never forget the confusion in his eyes. Not recognition. Not warmth. Just a silent question. Asterisk, who are you? Asterisk, I whispered. You're safe, Daniel. You've been in an accident. My voice cracked under the weight of everything I couldn't explain. The doctors rushed in. A flood of white coats and clipped voices. Words like miraculous and stable filled the air. My family arrived minutes later, as though they'd been camped in the hallway waiting for this exact second. And just like that, the performance began. My mother clutched Daniel's hand, tears slipping down her perfectly powdered face. We've prayed for this moment, she sobbed. My father spoke in rehearsed platitudes, already spinning the story for the cameras, but Daniel wasn't focused on them. His voice rasped, raw from disuse, as he whispered, "What happened?" Leela stepped forward, plastering on a smile so brittle it could have shattered. "Don't worry, darling. Everything is under control." But Daniel's eyes slid back to me. "Who is she?" The room went still. I felt every pair of eyes drilling into me, daring me to speak. My throat tightened. My mother answered for me, her tone sharp as glass. "This is Maya, your wife." Daniel blinked. His confusion hardened into disbelief. "Maya what?" You could feel the air snap in half. Leela's face drained of color. My father cleared his throat, launching into a polished explanation about legal protections and family unity. But Daniel wasn't listening. His gaze locked onto me, searching for the truth. And for once, I didn't look away. His voice cracked as he repeated it. "Married." I nodded. The word yes stuck in my throat, but he read it in my eyes. That was the moment the cracks in our charade blew wide open. Leela spiraled almost instantly. It wasn't supposed to be her. She screamed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She stole everything from me. She ranted about betrayal, about humiliation, her words unraveling faster than anyone could stop her. My parents tried to corral her, hissing for her to compose herself, but it was useless. The golden child had finally slipped. Meanwhile, Daniel just stared, caught between shock and exhaustion. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Rage, betrayal, or just the dizzying realization that his life had been rewritten without him. That night, my parents cornered me. "You say nothing," my father ordered, voice low and venomous. "Do you hear me? You don't embarrass this family." "Not now," my mother chimed in, her words laced with fox sympathy. "Maya, darling, this is delicate. For Daniel's sake, keep quiet. Let us handle it." For years, I would have bowed my head, agreed, played my role. But not this time. I looked them in the eye, the same people who'd caged me in this nightmare, and said, "No." The word was small, simple, but it cracked something open inside me. My father's face darkened, a storm gathering behind his eyes. "Don't be foolish. You'll ruin us all. I straightened my shoulders, feeling for the first time like the ground was mine to stand on. Maybe you've already ruined enough. Their silence was deafening. And as I walked away from them that night, I realized something. The game had changed. Daniel was awake. The lies were unraveling. And for once, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Do you think Daniel will side with Maya? Or the family? When Daniel woke, the questions never stopped circling between us. He didn't ask directly at first, just studied me with those sharp, unblinking eyes, like he was waiting for the mask to slip. But one night, after the chaos of visitors and family politics, he asked it plainly. No pretense, no theatrics, just Maya. What happened? The room went still. I could hear the monitor ticking behind him, the soft hiss of the oxygen, my own pulse in my ears. For weeks, I'd been rehearsing excuses, half-truths, tidy explanations that would make me sound like anything other than a pawn. But when the moment came, the words tangled in my throat. So I didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took my time. That night, I sat at the small desk by the window and pulled out a notebook. The same one I'd been filling with thoughts no one cared to hear. My hand shook at first, but once the pen touched the page, it poured out. I told him everything. How my parents whispered of contracts and inheritances while his body lay unconscious. How they cornered me, pressured me, dressed their greed as duty. How Leela raged and clawed, but secretly sighed with relief. How every step I took down that twisted aisle felt like a betrayal of us both. I didn't dress it up. I didn't soften the edges. And for the first time in my life, I didn't apologize for existing. When I finished, the letter wasn't a plea. It wasn't a defense. It was just the truth. I folded it carefully, left it on his bedside table, and walked away. The next morning, when I came in, the pages were scattered across his lap. His eyes were red not from anger, but from reading, rereading, trying to piece together the story no one else had dared to tell him. He looked at me, searching, maybe waiting for a confession. But I said nothing, because sometimes silence says more than any explanation ever could. And in that silence, something shifted. For the first time, I wasn't the invisible daughter, the dutiful placeholder, the scapegoat. I was just Maya, and he finally saw me. Time has a way of softening the noise. In the weeks after Daniel learned the truth, everything around us felt like a storm. The whispers, the reporters, the frantic damage control my parents tried to spin. Leela clawing for sympathy, painting herself as the victim of a stolen fairy tale. But storms burn out eventually. And when the dust finally settled, what remained was silence. Daniel didn't rage. He didn't shout. Instead, he quietly began to cut ties. Meetings with the family grew shorter. Invitations went unanswered. And one by one, the bridges my parents had so carefully built with his fortune and status crumbled to ash. Leela tried to salvage her image, but envy is hard to disguise. People saw through her charm. Business partners backed away, friends kept their distance, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't the center of attention. She was a cautionary tale. As for my parents, without Daniel's name propping them up, they slipped back into the obscurity they'd always feared. The parties stopped, the calls stopped, and slowly. So, did their irrelevance? Meanwhile, I found myself breathing differently. For years, my life had been about survival, keeping my head down, keeping quiet, keeping peace. But now, I began to live. I went back to school, took classes I'd always been told were useless. I filled notebooks with words that were mine, not just the echo of someone else's demands. I learned how to sit with my own company and not feel invisible. Daniel and I, we weren't a fairy tale. Not yet, maybe not ever. But he treated me like a person, not a placeholder, not a pawn, just Maya. And that was enough. Sometimes he'd find me journaling late at night and ask, "What are you writing this time?" And I'd smile, close the notebook, and say, "Just things I don't ever want to forget." Because that's the thing about healing. It doesn't erase the scars, it teaches you to live with them. Looking back, I realized revenge wasn't what freed me. I didn't need to destroy them. They did that to themselves. What freed me was choice, the decision to no longer play their game. And maybe that's the real ending. Forgiveness isn't about pretending the past didn't happen, it's about deciding who deserves to be part of your future. For me, that future was finally mine. And so, Maya's victory didn't come with fireworks. There was no grand confrontation, no dramatic final blow. Instead, it came in something far rarer: quiet dignity. She chose herself, while her parents scrambled to salvage their names and Leela unraveled in public shame. Maya built a life rooted in peace, not bitterness. And that's the thing about true revenge: it isn't about destruction. It's about refusing to let cruelty define you. She walked away whole, and in doing so, she left them to face the ruins of their own making. Sometimes I think about how tempting it would have been for her to scream, to drag every dirty truth into the light. But she didn't. She understood something we often forget: silence can be louder than any accusation. And maybe that's why her story lingers. Because in the end, Maya reminded us that power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stands tall, unshaken, and refuses to bow. Now, if you found this story as cathartic as I did, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. It takes hours to craft these scripts, sift through the details, and bring them to life. Your support isn't just appreciated, it's what makes it possible for us to keep telling stories like this one. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, dignity is the sweetest form of revenge.